I'm rabbinic intern Josh Shapiro. And I'm here at Temple Akiva in Culver City. Thank you all for coming out this evening on this Friday night. It is an interesting time of year we're in, where many people are traveling. We have friends and family in town. We have friends and family who have gone out of town. And so it's really special to be able to continue to build community on this Shabbat. We offer our thanks for coming together with the words of Hine Ma Tov on page 10. Hine Ma Tovu Manayim Sheverachim Gam Yachad. 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 How good and how pleasant it is that siblings can dwell together. To bring in Shabbat, I'd like to invite up Meg and Carol to help with our candle blessings and our Kiddush, which begins on page 2.
Can you help me with the clicker? Like that.
So if you know,
Oh, I see. Okay.
it just is really tense because you gotta.
Let me try it. Anything hurt to it?
So now if you would just hold the trigger.
Just hold it.
Here you go. We can just.
Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotov, v'tzilanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Please rise as you are able for Kiddush on page 10. On page 5.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu
Eloheinu
melech haolam, borei peri hagafen.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav, v'ratzavanu בשבת קודשו, באהבה וברצון הנחי לנו, זיכרון למעשה בראשית, כי הוא יום תחילה למקראי קודש, זכר לציאת מצרים. כי באנו בחרת, ואותנו קידשת מכל העמים. בשבת קודשך, באהבה וברצון הנחלתנו. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת.
Amen.
לחיים. Please be seated. Thank you. Thank you. Let us invite our Sabbath bride to our Shabbat with Lecha Dodi, and also give us a chance to warm up a bit and bring some energy to our prayer. Lecha Dodi is on page 20, and as is our custom, we will be joining together with verses 1, 2, 5, and 9, and we will rise as a community when we get to verse 9. Lecha Dodi likra pnei Shabbat nekabela, shamor v'zachor b'dibor echad, hishmi'anu el hameyuchad, Adonai echad u'shamo echad, l'shem ultiferet lehila, lecha dodi likakala, pnei Shabbat nekabela, likrat Shabbat lehuven el yuchad, ki hi mekor habracha, merosh mikedem nesuha, sof maaseh b'machashaticha, lecha dodi likakala, pnei Shabbat nekabela, hitoreri kiva orech, kumi uri, shir daberi, kivod Adonai alaik nigla, lecha dodi likakala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Please rise and face our entrance. Bo'iva shalom, ateret bala, gam besimcha uvtzola, toch emune am seula, bo'ichala, lecha dodi likakala, pnei Shabbat nekabela, lecha dodi likakala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Please be seated. Let us take a moment now to welcome one another. Say hello to familiar faces, to new faces, and introduce ourselves. Let us find our seats and we may continue our conversations towards the end of our tefillah this evening. Let us find a pausing place in our conversations. We will be able to continue them as a community later on. We continue our prayers on page 26 with the Hatzi Kaddish. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabba Be'alma divrach hirotei ve'amlich malchutei B'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chayedecho Beit Yisrael Bagala bagala uv'izman kariv Vimeru Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabba Mevarach Le'alam Almei Almaya Yitbarach Yitbarach V'yishtabach V'yitpa'ar V'yitramam V'yitnaseh V'yitadar V'yitaleh V'yitalal Shemei Tekudasha B'richu Le'ela Mikol Birchata V'shirata Tushbechata V'nechemata Damiran Be'alma Vimeru Amen. For Baruch Hu, let us set our intention with words found at the top of page 29. There is one who sings the song of his own life, finding everything within himself. There is one who leaves the circle of herself and sings the song of her people. There is one whose voice rings with the song of humanity, hoping for the highest perfection. And there is one who rises even higher, uniting with all creatures, with all worlds, filling the universe with song. Nivarech, let us bless. We rise now in body or spirit with our Baruch Hu on page 28. Baruch Hu et Adonai Hamvorach. Baruch Adonai Hamvorach Leolam Vaed. Adonai. We'll have to save that excitement for Saturday morning. Please be seated. We actually are on a hiatus for our winter break for our Saturday morning study together. But save those for announcements. With an appreciation for our world around us, let us turn the page to page 30 for Ma'ariv Aravim. We read our prayer together. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bidvaro ma'ariv aravim, bechochma poteach she'arim, uvitvuna meshane itim, umachalif et hazmanim, sader et hakochavim, b'mishmerotehem berkia kirtzono. Borei yom v'layla, golel or mipnei choshech, v'choshech mipnei or. Ma'avir yom umevi layla, mavdil ben yom uvein layla. Adonai tzevaot shemo, el chai v'kayam, tamid yimloch aleinu leolam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai, hama'ariv, aravim. We rise once more for our prayer of the Shema, our central call as a Jewish people. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem, Kivod Malchuto, Leolam Vaed. Please be seated. Turn the page and continue on 36 with Ve'ahavta. Page 36, 3-6. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'odecha ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha Vishinantam livanecha, vidibarta bam, bishiftecha b'veitecha, uvlechtecha vaderech, uvsholchbecha uvkumecha, ukshartam leod al yadecha, vihayu letotafot b'neinecha. Uchtavtam al mezuzot beitecha uvisharecha leman tizkeru vasitem ekol mitzvotai vitem keroshim lelohechem ani Adonai Elohechem Asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim liot lachem le'Elohim ani Adonai Elohechem emet. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before we ever stood at Sinai, that wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get there from here to there, except by joining hands and marching together. I chose this reading thinking of our Torah portion this week. Torah portion Vayechi literally means he lived there. The he is Joseph, that Joseph, even though he ended up in Egypt because his brothers, they sold him into slavery, and Joseph's time in Egypt was filled with trials, whether his employer's wife trying to build a relationship with him, to put it kindly, whether it's getting thrown into jail and then finding his way all the way up to the high ranks of leadership in the Egyptian government, to then being challenged by seeing his brothers once more and figuring out how to build a relationship with brothers that he never got along with well before they sold him into slavery. In all of that, Sfat HaEmet, a commentator, highlights that our Torah portion is that Joseph lived in Egypt. He wasn't simply there. We have lots of different verbs to describe a temporary status of being in a land. But Joseph made a life for himself. He built a family. He rebuilt a family. He figured out how to live a Jewish life in a place not set up for Judaism. He really found a way to live in spite of a really challenging life. And so, yes, we have to go through Egypt, and we will remember the slavery of Egypt over the coming weeks as we start the book of Exodus. But let us remember that Joseph found a home. He made a home in Egypt. I think about this a lot because my partner Phyllis and I were just traveling through the Southwest. We spent a few days with her family in rural West Texas, and all along our drive, we came across different Jewish communities, some of which Phyllis's family had been a part of over 150 years ago, when it was really the Wild West, the frontier lands. And when I've tried to explain where I was going and the Jewish communities I'd be passing through to some friends out here, the response was always, there's Jews there? What are Jews doing in these rural cowboy country lands? And what are they still doing there? Haven't they left yet? Haven't they come to places like Los Angeles or New York or just larger Jewish communities? I mean, they could, but they choose not to. We have these communities who have found a way to live where they are, to live, not just be there. Some places make it a little easier. I will say it's a little easier being here in Los Angeles at times when we have dozens of synagogues. We have so many other institutions to enable Jewish living. But they've done it in their own ways, and it brings a richness to their Judaism too, a richness that is inspiring. We were counting for a minyan today, and clearly we certainly passed making a minyan. But when you have a small community, a reform one, you still might get that phone call saying, hey, we need you. We need you to be our 10th. It's a value of community that we sometimes lose track of when we get bigger and more comfortable. And so when I read now of Joseph having figured out how to live in Egypt, so much so that his family left Eretz Yisrael to come to Egypt because that's where they needed to be for a time. They made a home there. They did it in a way that kept their Judaism central, engaged with Egyptian culture as necessary, and they learned to thrive. We'll find out what happened when they thrived a little bit too much later on. But let us remember, as we live our lives, yes, we'd make choices to enable our Judaism to be best lived, to best expressed. But wherever we find ourselves, whatever the world looks like, there's a way to live, not just exist Jewishly. So let us all be able to say, Vayechi, that we lived our Judaism, wherever we go, whatever the world ends up looking like. And to bring that celebration of joy, we join together with our Micha Mocha, our song of celebration on page 40, page 40. Micha mocha ba'elim Adonai, Micha mocha nedar b'kodesh, Nora tehilot osef eleh, Nora tehilot osef eleh. Malchutecha ra'uvanecha, bokei hayom, lifn Moshe u'Miriam, Ze Elianu ve'amiru, Ze Elianu ve'amiru. Adonai imloch le'olam va'ed. Adonai imloch leolam vaed. Yai rai rai da rai da rai da rai rai rai. Yai rai rai da rai da rai rai rai. Yai rai da rai da rai da rai da rai rai rai. Yai rai 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 yai da rai rai rai. We rise now for our Amidah, beginning on page 46. Adonai sefetai tiftach ufi agitehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, v'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, v'Elohei Leah. Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor V'Hanora El Elyon Gomer Chasadim Tovim V'Konei HaKol V'Zocher Chazdei Avot V'Imahot Umevi Geula Livnei V'Nehem Leman Shemo Be'ahava Melech Ozer Moshiach Magen Baruch atah Adonai Magen Avraham V'Ezrat Sarah Atah Gibor Leolam Adonai Mechayei HaKol Atah Rav Lehoshia Mechalkel Chaim Bechesed Mechaye hakol berachamim rabim. Somech noflim verofech olim. Umatir asurim. Umekayem emunato. Lishene afar. Michamocha ba'al gevurot. Umido melach, melech memit, umechayeh, umatzmiach Yeshua, v'ne'eman atah lechayot hakol. Baruch atah Adonai, mechayeh hakol. Atah kadosh v'shimcha kadosh, Ukeroshim b'chol yom yehallelucha selah. Baruch atah Adonai ha'el hakadosh. Please be seated. As I am on school break, I've been watching a little bit more TV than normal. And a show that I've been binge-watched is an anime from Japan called Blue Lock. It was very popular last year, and I was just catching up. And it's about a program for high schoolers in Japan who played this position of striker in soccer. And the goal was for Japan to train these strikers to finally have a player good enough for them to win a World Cup as a country. It's the premise of the show. And so what they do is they spend all day, day in and day out, training all of the best strikers at the high school level in the country. And they're trying to figure out how to be the best. What is it that can make them even better than they already were before the program began? And one of the critical points of growth came from when the players who succeeded in knowing what their strengths are and what their weaknesses are. They all knew they were good, but to know exactly what play style would elevate their natural skill set, and then given the fact that they're playing against the best opponents, they had to be wary of their weaknesses because they would surely be exploited by their opponent if they could not control the pace of the game. It's a really great show. I really enjoyed it. And it wasn't about turning weaknesses into strengths. It's nothing as poetic as that. It's simply, don't get caught in a long sprint against a sprinter. You're gonna lose, so don't let that situation come forth. Not get faster. And I really enjoyed hearing that feedback, that lesson, because it's one we often aren't told. We're told, work on our weaknesses, turn them into a strength. And so coming up in this Torah portion, in addition to Joseph's success in living in Egypt, we have Jacob offering his 12 sons blessings before he passes away. But if you read the blessings, they sound awful like just insults. Nothing more than insults. Jacob tells Dan he is like a serpent because he lies behind people's backs. He tells his son Benjamin he is like a ravenous wolf, impatient and only able to make spontaneous choices. That doesn't sound like a blessing that I want. But a modern commentator, Pincus Pelly, suggests that these were in fact blessings, not omens about the future of how the 12 tribes will end up, which is a common interpretation. Pelly believes that these are blessings, and I believe that they are blessings, just as the lesson I learned from Blue Lock. These sons needed to hear what their weakness was, and their father knew that he was the only one who could maybe get them to hear their weaknesses so that they might work on them. It's really hard to hear, you're lazy. You get other people to do your work. But I like to think that Jacob, sitting with his son, was able to say, look, I know you are so clever. It's a cleverness I see myself in you. But you've used that cleverness to avoid hard work. You don't know what a day of hard work looks like. And my blessing for you is that you learn, because someday you will have to put in the hard work. You won't be able to get around it. And when that day comes, I want you to be ready. Now, that is my interpretation on this blessing. And I hope we all have people in our life who are comfortable enough to tell us where our flaws may lie for our betterment, not to make us self-conscious or feel bad that we're just not very good at something or we have a shortcoming that came up during this family season. But to know you have a short temper, and I want you to find some tools to manage that anger in a productive way. Because I love you so much, I don't want you to get hurt or to hurt others. No, it's really hard to hear that. It's easy to get defensive. But when we do hear difficult feedback, even if it's coming from someone who might not have our best interests in heart, we have the ability to turn that from a curse into a blessing. Jacob's words could have been curses if his sons took them to be curses. But they very well could have been blessings if they motivate us to create our life for a blessing. Because what is a blessing if not an opportunity to live life a little bit better? So as we go about on our Shabbat and forth beyond it, let us take a moment to not be so defensive when we're made aware of a misstep, of a fault, but to think, how can I make this a moment of blessing, a moment of growth, so that I can be my best self? That Shabbat Shalom. We continue now in personal prayer. We join our prayer together once more with Shalom Rav on page 60. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Hamcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Hamcha Tasim Leolam. Ki atahu melech adon Lechol hashalom, ki atahu melech adon, lechol hashalom. Shalom rav al Yisrael amcha, tasim leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam Tasim Leolam. At this time, we think of those in need of healing. Those in need of healing of body, of mind, of spirit. If you are praying for someone on this Shabbat, I invite you to share their name as my arm moves across our community so we may all join together in a prayer for their healing. The words to our Misha Berach prayer can be found on page 253. 253. Misha Avotenu Mekor habracha leimotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Misheberach imotenu mikor habracha le'avotenu Eloheinu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. We rise. Before our concluding prayers, I'd like to invite up Mark Bauer on behalf of our congregation with announcements.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Thank you for coming out for our last service of 2023. It's also the end of the year, so it's also a good time to possibly make your end of the year donations to your synagogue. So you have a couple more days to do that. So if you are thinking of doing it, please do so. Thank you to Rabbinic Intern Shapiro for great service, and to Megan Joyce for leading the candle blessing. Sorry, Carol. Sorry. Megan Carroll. Happy New Year, everybody. The Torah study is on hiatus. It picks back up on January 6th, but you are more than welcome to study the Torah on your own time this weekend. There's an event on January 7th, Rosh Hodesh, Spirituality for Women event at 7:30. And then there's a lot more events coming in January, a Mahjong tournament, Halab, Braid and Bake. And just everyone on behalf of the board, to say have a safe and healthy New Year, and see you in 2024. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you, Mark. We have a lot coming up in January, so be sure to keep an eye out on those emails, on the physical bulletin, if you're more analog style. I am looking forward to some Mahjong sisterhood, so can't wait for the next couple weeks. We will conclude our prayers beginning with Aleinu on page 282. Please rise as you are able. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, l'atid gedula leotzer breshit, shelo asanu kegoye haratzot, velo samanu kemishpechot adama, shelo sam chalkenu hahem, vegoralenu kechol hamonam, va'anachnu korim, umishtachavim umodim, lifnei melech, malchei hamlachim, hakadosh baruch hu, v'nemar, v'haya Adonai, lemelech al kol haaretz, bayom hahu, yeh Adonai echad, u'shemo echad. Please be seated. There are stars up above, so far away we only see their light long, long after the star itself is gone. And so it is with people that we loved. Their memories keep shining, even brightly, ever brightly, though their time with us is done. but the stars that light up the darkest night. These are the lights that guide us. As we live our days, these are the ways we remember. On this Shabbat, our Temple Akiba community are recalling in Shloshim the first 30 days. Richard Levinson, father of Ron Levinson. If anyone is in the beginning periods of mourning, I invite you now to share their name with our community. You remember the yard sites on this Shabbat of the plaques located in the Sue and Jerry Erfrig Memorial Room. Mendel Aaron, Anna Bottler, Dorothy Davidson, Edward Elfman, Saul Geffner, Abraham Graff, Martin Miller, David Price, Murray Samuels, Blanche Sikoff, Samuel Stein, Nathan Vogel, Iris Zalkind. We also recall the yard sites of Jennifer Alexander, Samuel Brandeis, Ruth Breslow, Paul Breslow, Martha Galler, Jeanette Rose Grossman, Esther Haber, Eileen Halperin, Dorothy Hinden, Sydney Hurwitz, Barry Josephson, Stan Kaltman, Herman Karp, Thomas Cass, Louis Kent, Maya Kodorovskaya, Lola Clapper, Viola Kluwins, Marion Krantz, Saul Lazaroff, Murray Leibowitz, Barney Mann, Regina Miller, Leon Namias, Louis Newhouse, Rebecca Penzo, Benjamin Reisel, Harriet Rosenberg, William Rosenberg, Ruth Saperstein, Thelma Shatsky, Helen Sofer, Alice Vance, Rose Wagner, Isaac Wildowski, Rosal Walter, and Samuel Waxman. If you are calling someone on the Shabbat, I invite you to share their name with our community. As is our custom, I invite us to rise as one community for Kaddish Yatom, our mourner's Kaddish, on page 294. 294. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, be'alma divrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei, be'chayachon uv'yomechon, uv'chayei techol beit Yisrael, ba'gala v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam olmei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei tekudasha barechu, le'ela mikol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, da'miran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama Rabbah min Shemaya, v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'imromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Zichronam livracha, may their memories be for a loving blessing. Please be seated. Before we make motzi, I'd like to share a poem on Shabbat by Alden Solovi. Well of life, bless my heart with the gifts of Shabbat, the presence of your love in my pulse, your glory in my chest, and your wonder in my breath. Bless my eyes with the gifts of Shabbat, the beauty of the candlesticks, the Kiddush cups, and halot. Bless my lips with the gifts of Shabbat, rejoicing in song and prayer, our melodies, ancient and new. Bless my ears with the gifts of Shabbat, hymns and praises, the nigunim of old, and blessed words of Torah. Bless my soul with the gifts of Shabbat, awe and thanksgiving, calm and surrender, beauty, righteousness, and peace. Let these gifts descend gently on all your people Israel, so that together, wherever we may be, in one voice from the four corners of the earth we sing, Boechem l'shalom, Malachei hashalom, Malachei elyon. Come in peace, messengers of peace, angels of the Most High. Now bless our challah and continue being able to schmooze once more. There's a reason why Phyllis normally handles the challah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz te'avon. Shabbat shalom, everyone.